Hi, welcome to One Eye on the Page. I'm Scott. This is the June reading list. I read 23 books this month, which is the most I've read in any month since last April 2022, when I read 31 books, 29 of which I believe were Agatha Christie books. So they're roughly 250 pages each. And I didn't really go out of my way to try to read so many books this month. It was just a combination of vacation, which from the beginning of the month until the 12th, when I was pretty much done with the vacation, I read 14 books. So I only read 9 books in the last 18 days of the month. So I am going to go over these books, and this is water, by the way, just so you know. I'm just trying to hydrate. So unused to drinking water that I spilled it. So I'm going to list the books from worst to first. Now, at number 23, we have Something Fabulous by Alexis All. Something Fabulous is a gay romance, although to me, there's not really a lot of romance in here. There is some sex. Well, there's some sex. There's no romance. There's no liking. There's no companionship. There's no humanity. It's just a book about awful people. The person who would most often be the butt of the joke in other books is the best character in the book, but he's still also the butt of the jokes in this book. It's just horrible people doing horrible things. I read this book. I was planning to do a romance video, which I have done, and I was going to do 5 books, which I had selected, and then I decided to read further books. And I picked this one because my daughter has read Alexis Hall before and had this book on their to be read list. So I picked it up and I instantly, well, not instantly, it took about 3 chapters before I regretted it. My daughter often has me pick consequent books for her if she doesn't meet her TBR for the previous month. And I generally try to pick books that I think that she will like, but that she might not pick on her own. This month, though, I picked this as her consequence book, not because I think she will like it, but because I think she too must suffer. And if she does like it, the other child may receive all the inheritance. I'm just saying. I have threatened that we need to film a video after she does read it, so we will see if that happens. Book number 22 is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, one of the books that I originally did pick for my romance video. There is inherently nothing wrong with the writing in here. I don't have a problem with Lucy, the female main character. Almost all of my problems are with Joshua Templeman, the male main character. Joshua Templeman is a walking red flag. After the end of this book, he likely did some horrible things to Lucy. She was lucky if she escaped from it with her life. Just one of those guys who hurts somebody because he loves them so much. It's a how to for people to see the type of person they should avoid being with. Except it messes it up because they're together at the end. I thought that this was going to be the worst book I read this month, and then Something Fabulous happened. But Joshua Templeman is still okay. Yeah, I think he's still the worst character, but there is a character in Something Fabulous that really brings it down to the wire with him. So that is book number 22. Book number 21 is Ghosts of Christmas Past, edited by Tim Martin. I mentioned this before in the vlogs. There's not a lot of Christmas in here. Christmas is mentioned in every story or the season, but it feels like people are told you need to write a ghost story and it has to be involved with Christmas somehow. And somebody just read, I don't know, just put a tree in there somewhere. Mention Santa Claus. Good job. Um, the stories are generally dark, which I'm fine with, and I don't even mind Christmas stories being dark. I just don't want to go into a book called Ghost of Christmas Past and Christmas being the least relevant word in there. I just couldn't really get into it. The best story in there was Neil Gaiman's Nicholas Was, and that was like 2 or 3 pages long. So, uh, fairly forgettable short story collection. Book number 20 is Icebreaker. This is another original romance video book. Unlike the two previous romance novels, I didn't have a big problem with the romance itself. It's a young adult romance, as you could see by the figure skater and the hockey player on the front. You might assume that it's maybe a takeoff of the cutting edge. It's not. I would have preferred that, but the romance itself is not bad. I don't buy that this couple is a for the long haul couple, but I mean they work as a couple. There's nothing wrong with the couple. I just don't expect it to be long lasting. My big problem with this book is the other characters, the friends, especially the main male character's friends, aren't good friends. He has one friend that he's been friends with since they were about 6, and I don't see any friendship at all there. It's like the writer, who's it, Hannah Grace, has assumed that all male friendships involve the friends dogging on each other, which is often the case, but that's all it is. There's nothing holding these people together other than that. And the coaches in there are awful coaches, making stupid decisions for plot purposes only. Nate, the main male character, his father makes an appearance in there. He seems to be hyped up to be doing something, you know, quite involved, and then doesn't really play much of a part in the novel at all. Some of these romances seem to forgive like abuse a little bit. At least this one and The Hating Game, I think, do. Book number 20 is One More Thing by BJ Novak, who you probably know best as Ryan from The Office. It's a collection. I don't know exactly how many stories, but I'm going to guess about 50 short stories. Most of them are very short, 1 to 3 pages, some at 5 to 7 pages. The best comparison I have made, and I've made several, is that it's like the New Yorker cartoons. They don't quite make a lot of sense, but you laugh anyways. I do, to make it seem like you understand what the hell they're meaning, and then you forget about them. Most of the stories are like that. There are 4 longer short stories, one of which, Kellogg's, is awful, and 3 other ones which I actually think are pretty good. There is Sophia, about a sex doll that falls in love with her owner, which it's not necessarily original or great, but it's still a good story, especially in the collection that we have so far. The second one, oh, one of these days we have to do something about Willie, about some college friends who have a friend, Willie, who seems to be going off the deep end, partying too much, drinking too much, and they try to stage an intervention. And there is a twist ending, which is such a twist ending that you almost see it coming. But I still think it's fairly clever, especially among all the other short stories, and I liked it. But my favorite short story in here is, and I'm going to mispronounce this, J.C. Auditat, translator of Don Quixote, which is about a man who translates Don Quixote, and then I forget which one, but a Leo Tolstoy novel. And well, I won't tell you what he finally translates because it's funny. This story was hilarious to me, but also had what I don't really see a lot in a lot of the other stories, some emotion to it. I don't know what I could really say about the quality of the ending, but sometimes it's just the journey. And this was a good journey, but overall, most of the stories in here were forgettable. And that was number 19. Number 18 is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I read 4 Emily Henry books. This was by far the worst of them, about a couple who break up but don't tell their friends, and they end up going to a vacation week and have to pretend that they are still together. None of these people should be in a relationship except for the lesbian couple. The lesbian couple was actually a good couple, but they were almost bit players in this, even though they were major parts of the friend group. But none of these are good relationship people or romantic or friendship wise. That this is a group of like the best of best friends, and they should not be. So it was just I think Emily Henry is a talented writer, but I don't think that the story and the characters made any sense at all. And this is one of the 2 novels of her that I like the least. This one and another one, which I will go to, pretty much involve the female character giving up on something that she has worked hard for, but it's okay because she decides she doesn't like it anymore. That's a very Lifetime movie kind of thing. So this video is just apparently about me slagging Lifetime. Okay, number 17 is Volume 2 of the Complete Short Stories of Guy de Maupassant. Apparently, I like the Franco-Prussian War because that was the main overall story arc of Volume 1, which I liked a lot better than this. And this was basically about the ennui of being French a little bit. Uh, Not many of the stories really stuck out too much. One in particular, the mustache, I really disliked. Other ones were somewhat forgettable. The only one that really stuck out, and I'll have to correct it on screen here, but it's either, I think it's Family Affair, but it could also be Family Portrait. It's Family Something, about a man who basically gets crap from all sides. He's not getting the promotion he wants. His wife was upset about him not getting the promotion. He seems to be downtrodden by his mom a little bit. But his mother dies, and then his wife makes him grab all the stuff that they want before the sister comes along so that they don't have to fight about who gets what. Except that apparently the doctor was wrong and the mother is not dead. She is in like some kind of deep sleep synecode or something like that. And she has actually heard everything that's going on. That was by far the best short story in the collection. It'd probably be in like the top 3 or 4 stories of the previous collection. I believe there are like 11 or 13 volumes in the complete short story. So I will be reading more, but I'm hoping that the quality is more like the first volume than the second. Number 16 is Read Between the Lines by Rachel Lacy, which is a sapphic love story, basically a retelling of You've Got Mail, which was a retelling of Shop Around the Corner. A bookstore owner receives an eviction notice from a bookstore where she has worked for many years, and her mother owned it before her. She tries to talk to the woman at the real estate company. The woman's father owns a real estate company, but she's very business-like. The bookstore owner doesn't know is that that woman is also uh, a romance writer who writes under a pseudonym, and that the bookstore owner and the writer have been communicating with each other on Twitter. They just don't know who the other one actually is. Uh, I like the romance there. I like that Lacy doesn't drag out like people not knowing who the other people were for a long time. Really, the big reason I dislike this, and which I haven't seen in the other Lacy books that I have read that I will talk about later, is that the writing is just not up to par. It 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 needed some editing. It needed a rewrite. I just the story and the characters are probably my second favorite of the Lacy books that I've read. It's just the writing wasn't there. After that, number 15 is Come Away With Me, also by Rachel Lacy. Honestly, I finished this one yesterday, and it should have been higher up on the list. I was enjoying it quite a bit. Not one of the best books, but a very good book about a woman, a TV star, who is suffering panic attacks after seeing somebody throw themselves in front of a subway. And she's trying to get back into life. And she meets a flight attendant at a bar while she's trying to do this incognito. And they develop a relationship, and the relationship is fine. It almost feels like Lacy just kind of ran out of story at the end, and then she had a jealousy issue, which that was fine. That makes sense. But then she had stuff happen like the second to the last chapter that's like I don't get why it happened. It was just like a random thing that happened, and it's like, oh no, and then it's not really touched on, and then the ending itself just felt abrupt. I don't know what to feel about this book. I was going to give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars until those last two chapters, and it dropped it down to a 3. Number 14 is Death Comes to Marlow by Robert Thorogood. It is a sequel to the Marlow Murder Club, which is one of my favorite books of the year, or one of the favorite books that I've read this year, which I read in May, and the sequel came out recently. It's a good book. It's a good book. The Marlow Murder Club was a great book. So to go from the Marlow Murder Club to Death Comes to Marlow is a disappointment. One of the things I liked about the Marlow Murder Club is that the Marlow Murder Club, 3 women who formed that, not only is it about them trying to solve this murder, but we also know things about them too. Usually in these types of books, the detective, their life outside of the detecting isn't playing a big part, and I like that it did in the Marlow Murder Club. And it does in Death Comes to Marlow, but not to the same degree. And the main character, Judith Potts, barely touched on at all any of her history or what's going on in her life. And I solved the murder in the Marlow Murder Club 3/4 of the way through. I solved the murder here halfway through. Good writing, but it's obvious who the murderer is. No special skill on my part, just seeing where It's obviously going to lead in. I believe it's going to be a trilogy, so there's going to be another book. I will read it. I just my expectations are tempered a little bit after this one. Number 13, Love at First Set by Jennifer Dugan, which is another sapphic romance. A gym manager talks inadvertently, not knowing who she's talking to, the gym owner's daughter out of getting married with reason. She wasn't happy, and it's like, if you're not happy doing this, don't do it. But of course, they get into a relationship, and the relationship is fine. It's another one of those where I don't think it lasts, even though the novel says, "Oh yeah, it lasts." No, it doesn't. If the book ends at like 350 pages, at page 400, they're donezo. It was good for what it was, but no. Big problem I had is the parents sucked in here, and parents suck. That's fine, but they suck, and it's just like, okay, they suck. You're still invited to this. Kara, the daughter's brother, and I can't remember the other woman's name, but he's her best friend. He is a crappy best friend. And he apologizes at the end, but that's after a whole book of being a crappy best friend. I'm not going to say I'm not going to read another Jennifer Dugan book, because I didn't think I was going to read another Rachel Lacy book, and I did. But I'm less likely to than with the Rachel Lacy books. Number 12 is The Summer of Broken Rules by Cale Walther. It's another young adult romance. Another romance where the book seems to indicate it lasts longer than I think it would actually last. But that's fine. There's nothing wrong with this couple. I just think they're young, and there's nothing in there that shows that it's more than just young love. But Meredith loses her sister, and then she goes on vacation. It's like a year and a half later, to where her cousin is getting married, and she meets the cousin's fiance's brother relationship. They're also playing the whole family like a game of assassin, where they're attacking each other with like water guns. The main problem I had with this, which I guess is a trend in a lot of these romances, is crappy friends. And this one is just one particular crappy friend who is giving Meredith a lot of crap. Meredith, who, I remind you, lost her sister. And let's see, I believe they're twin sisters, but I could be wrong with that. And the friend is like, "Oh, you don't really like talk to me, and you don't check in with me." It's like, okay, romances now with crappy friends. Oh, and the book was fine. The book was good. There's nothing. It was nothing objectionable about it except the crappy friend. It was just, it was a good book, and that's where it leaves at. Number 11 is The Nanny by Lana Ferguson. I mentioned before the hating game was a red flag. Honestly, this one's a red flag one too, but I don't know why I'm okay with it. A woman who was on OnlyFans has a subscriber that she was going to meet, but they don't meet. He doesn't show up. She deletes her account. Later on, I can't remember however long later, the job she is at lays her off, and she needs a job. She becomes a nanny to an executive chef. Shocker! Turns out that that was the guy who was a subscriber, but they don't know this, either one of them. And yeah, that is not good. Just, the whole employer-employee thing. But if you can look past that, it was fine. Honestly, My big problem with it is that it just seemed to be a different story once sex got involved. There's another book where there's even more sex, but I don't know. I didn't have a problem with the sex in here. The sex was here maybe just because of the dynamic. It seemed different. The characters seemed to change with the sex while apparently still being into each other. And I just didn't like it as much. And also, she's a nanny. There's a kid. What I was worried about all through the novel is that this kid was going to walk in on them. The kid doesn't, but that tampered with like my enjoyment of it. It wasn't an awful one, but if you go into it like suspending your disbelief, you might be fine. But if you go into it like you were an HR person, yeah, you're not going to enjoy this book. Number 10 is It's in Her Kiss by Rachel Lacy. This is about two Broadway actresses who are first both going for the same role. One of them gets it, one of them ends up in the ensemble. The one who gets it is questioning, but she hasn't come out. And the one who doesn't has come out. She has also had a previous girlfriend who didn't come out, so she's worried about that. Obviously, the two of them get together. Obviously, at one point, they both end up on stage acting because the play is about it's a musical. The musical is about a woman coming to grips with her sexuality, and there's another woman. So obviously, they're going to end up on stage kissing at some point. It was good. It was predictable, but I don't know that these are the types of books that we necessarily go into hoping for unpredictability. It was pleasant. It wasn't my favorite of the Rachel Lacey's, but as far as the romance books that I read, it was in the better half of them. Then the one book on audiobook I finished last month was Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I have seen the movie before, the Emma Thompson 1996 one. I have never read the book before. And maybe the experience of having seen the movie first played a little bit of havoc with me. For the most part, I enjoyed the book, but if you go into this book looking at it as a romance, you'd be wrong. The romance plays very little part in it. My big problem is in the movie, I understand why Marianne got with Colonel Brandon. I believe it's Colonel Brandon. It's just glossed over in this book. If you go into this book for the relationship between the two sisters, and there's another sister, but she's the Aunt Peggy of this book. It's a great book. The male characters really got the short end of the stick here, which is fine, except several of them are the love interest, and it's the whole Marianne Colonel Brandon relationship got like 2 pages. So I just didn't appreciate it as much as I might have if I had read it before the movie. Number 8 is Don't Cry for Me by Rachel Lacy, which is the first book in the Midnight in Manhattan series, which also includes It's in Her Kiss and Come Away With Me, and another one which I have not read yet. Eve, a reality TV host that's fix up businesses, finds a couple of kittens thrown into trash outside her apartment, contacts a woman she found on YouTube, try to get her to take them in because she basically does the kitty shelter stuff. And that's Josie, who owns a bar, and she's also has previously applied to have her business on Eve's show. Eve does not do bars for reasons which you'll see later in the book. Again, a dark backstory for these characters. if you read between the lines or Stars Collide or maybe some of her other books, you may not be expecting the dark backstory for the characters that are in Midnight in Manhattan series. But it's there. I liked it. It's another grumpy sunshine one. Unlike a lot of romances, I actually buy that Eve and Josie are together after the book ends, which we see that in other books in the series too. The only thing I would have liked was maybe a little bit more, I don't know, levity or lightness to the book, but it was still a good book. And then it was Love Unexpected by Jenny Procter. If you like to read romances but you don't like sex, this may be one of the ones for you. There's no sex at all in it. It's nice. I mean, I don't know what else to say besides that. It's just really nice, and that I don't mean that to come across as not a compliment. It's nice. A woman works at a YouTube company, but she has like severe social anxiety. But she's in love with the star of the YouTube company, and so she sends him a DM on her very old Instagram account, and they start talking back and forth. And then he decides he needs to find this woman because she's using her first name. Her first name is Anna, and her middle name's Rose. She goes by Rosie. He thinks it's two different women, and so he decides he's going to go to find her, and it's going to be the video for his company. So she ends up having to go with him to go find her. Again, it's just very nice. I tend to appreciate books that tackle mental health. And if you want a fairly clean romance, and apparently this is part of a series also, but I haven't read any of the other books in the series. Number 6 is the opposite end of the spectrum. If you really like your books to have sex, and then more sex, and more sex after that, just a lot of sex, then Double Pucked by Lauren Blakely is the book for you. I honestly got this book kind of as a joke because I was reading those romances and I was just like, well, I'm done with the ones I picked and go find this other one. I saw this was just one that Amazon said, maybe you'll like this. And I'm like, I don't know, man. About a woman who tries to get revenge on her cheating boyfriend by taking his tickets to meet his favorite hockey stars. And she's just gonna like take a picture of her with them and kind of rub it in his face. What she ends up doing is them at the same time, and they basically form a relationship. The three of them, well, the two of them with her. It's just it's no, you know, there's nothing going on between the guys, but how do you form the Eiffel Tower, Devil's Triangle, whatever? That's how it is. Um, it's still a good story, despite the sex or because of sex. I don't know. The sex was fine. Unlike other novels that I read, I didn't really roll my eyes at the sex because it seemed like some of them are just like having to detail every time they have sex, and it got boring. I don't really feel that happened with Double Pucked, which is funny because there was more sex here than any of the other books. Double Pucked was my number 6 book. Number 5 was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I don't know, I might actually switch this one with Double Pucked, but I'm going to say number 5. About two best friends who kind of fall apart because of something that happened on one of their vacations. 2 years later, the woman invites him on vacation again because the last time she was happy was when she was spending time with him. This is another one of those ones, like I mentioned with Happy Place, where the woman kind of give up something that she's built her life up to. So that's one thing I didn't like about it. I like the chemistry between the two of them. I like the like going back to each vacation they take, so we kind of see why they end up where they are. I probably would have had this up higher, except it just kind of fizzled at the end for me. Do I think this couple remains together? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Number 4 is Stars Collide by Rachel Lacy. And if you had told me after I read between the lines that my number 4 book this month would have been a Rachel Lacy book, I would have said, "Oh, I only read 4 books." But it was sweet. Another grumpy sunshine one, an older pop star, older 36, does a duet at the Grammys with the younger one. She's 27. The older one's been doing it for 20 years though. She's been doing it since she was a teenager. And then they go on tour together. The older one is Eden. Eden, she's just off a divorce. She's straight, but she's never really been too involved with men. She just felt maybe she wasn't that type of person. But the two of them, I'm forgetting the younger one's name. I'm sorry. But she's pansexual, I believe. And so not only is it the grumpy sunshine, but it's the experienced one helping the novice become who they're meant to be. And it was sweet, it was nice, it was romantic. I think of all the romance novels I read, probably the one about the two pop artists getting together is one where I said, yeah, this one will last a while. This one may last well beyond the book. Number 3 is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I, based on what I said in previous vlogs, this probably would have been number 2, but the number 2 book actually kind of jumped ahead of it for me. I just I have problems with the sister in here, and there's nothing wrong with the romance. There's nothing wrong with the two main characters. It's just not super exciting. The guy Charlie actually seems like a different character than perhaps like the um, Joshua Templeman one. So yeah, he may be a little bit boring, but it's another Grumpy Sunshine one, kind of a rivals turn to lovers one. The woman is a literary agent. Charlie is an editor. She tries to get him to take on one of her clients. It doesn't go well between them at first. Her sister wants her to go on vacation to a place that the author wrote about in one of her books, and she sees him there. He is, while still being an editor, he is working at his family's bookstore trying to help them. So apparently, part of the problem was that the writer was writing about his hometown. I had a lot of problems with the sister in here. Another issue where if people had just talked, then things might have gone better, but they didn't. But I still enjoyed it. I enjoy it a little bit less in hindsight, but what are you going to do? Number 2 is also by Emily Henry. It's Beach Read. It's about two writers, one a romance writer, one a literary writer, who end up at the same place, basically neighbors. She inherited the house from her father who has passed away, and who she also has found out cheated on her mom. And they decide to basically challenge each other to write in the other's style. So the guy's Gus, is supposed to write a romance novel, whereas January, August, get it? Is supposed to write a literary novel. it's probably the best written of the Emily Henry books, which is part of the reason I switched it with book lovers. There aren't a lot of moments in here where I'm like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Do I think that the two of them stay together? I think they have a better chance than other couples in some of these books, but there are plenty of other couples who are more likely than they are. But it was a fun read. The biggest problem I had the book, which tells you how good it is like it's called Beach Read, but a beach doesn't show up to like 2/3 of the way through the book. So that's what I have to complain about Beach Read. And my number one book for June is not the most of P.G. Wodehouse, but it is the novel Quick Service by P.G. Wodehouse, which the only place I can find it in print is in this book. I've read Quick Service before. It was an audio book. I read it for the podcast that my daughter and I do. I think I may have liked it even more the second time around. It is my first 5-star of the year. It's just perfect comedy. A lot of times in P.G. Wodehouse, there's just a character that makes you roll your eye, or something that's just so ridiculous, or the romance is a little bit too over the top. And I'm not saying that that doesn't happen in this novel, but it works in this novel. And one thing that really helps for me is that the main male character, one, even though he's the main male character, Joss Weatherby, he still isn't the focus like of everything. It's characters just go in and out. It's a perfect dance of all these different characters. But one thing I really like about him is that he's not either a lovable idiot, as my daughter says, like many Wodehouse characters, or just a self-assured, never wrong schmuck. My word, uh, like Smith. He does have that self-assuredness, but then he does have moments of hesitancy, and he apologizes, which you don't usually see from the male main characters in here unless they're a lovable idiot. So that is my number one book. Probably Wodehouse is not going to be my number one book next month because I know what book I'm reading, and it may not be the worst, but it's not going to be the best. And I'm probably not going to read 23 books next month. So that is it for June, and I will see you again soon.